we'll go ahead and go and start out. Myself, my name is Jennifer Ryon. I'm one of the board members of the Alliance, and I want to welcome you to our session today on boosting your personal brand. As you can see, I am the only one in the session at this moment. We're having some technical difficulties, so bear with me a little bit. Allison and I were going to have just a chat, an open dialogue, ask questions from the audience, and kind of go with what you guys are wanting to listen to and learn about today. So until then, I'll just start with a couple thoughts of my own. I hope you guys have all enjoyed the session so far today. I know I have, and the amount of great information I've received so far has been so beneficial to me, both professionally and personally. So I thank each of you guys for attending. As a reminder, let's just do some housekeeping. That all of the sessions are being recorded. So, there we go. There's Allison. How are you? Can you hear me? Oops. All right, can you hear me, Allison? All right, can everyone hear me? Hopefully you guys can hear me. There you go. Yes, okay, perfect, all right. So as Allison's working on this housekeeping, please make sure to go over to the Partner Lounge. We really appreciate all the 2020 corporate sponsors for supporting events such as this throughout the year. If it wasn't for them, we would not be able to host these events, as well as the virtual conference event sponsors today. Today's session is around how to boost your personal brand. But before we kind of jump into it, just to kind of give you a little bit of background about myself, I am currently the Chief Revenue Officer at Ryon Health Services and have been at my organization for over 14 years. I started in my workers' compensation career straight out of college with the ambition that I think a lot of graduates have, is climb that corporate ladder and make my family proud, but not really knowing how to go about that. You really don't think about your personal brand in a way that we're going to talk about today, but personal branding really has been a passion of mine because we live in the world of perception as reality, right? It's human nature to be mindful of who a person is based off of your opinion of them, whether it's seeing someone as trustworthy, a strong leader, independent, hardworking, or the opposite, like unreliable, doesn't follow through, etc. I continue to learn through my career to be very self-aware and how to present myself, because at the end of the day, I always ask myself, what am I doing? Am I doing everything I can and being the best version of myself, so that when an opportunity does come up to expand my career, there won't be a reason why someone wouldn't choose me, right? And so we kind of start to dive down into that. We're gonna see for a moment, see if Allison can
you hear me,
on.
Jen?
Yes, I hear you. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
I can. I am so sorry. I am having major technical issues with my camera, but Felicia kindly walked me through to get at least the audio. So I'm sorry you're going to have to look at my picture instead of my face.
No, your profile picture is amazing, so it's great. We'll start from there. So what I just did, I just kind of gave an intro, gave a little bit of background of myself. So let's just hop right into it and have you kind of give me, just introduce yourself and a little bit of background.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm so sorry. I'm red-faced right now, so I'm glad you can't see me. But my name is Allison Kelly. I am in client services at Sedgwick, so I have national responsibility for one of our large programs. I've been in the industry 17 years. Since I got out of college, I started right in the insurance industry and have been able to work my way through our industry and had lots of awesome experiences throughout our industry. I joined the Alliance about 4 years ago and am so excited to be a part of it. I'm an ambassador here in North Texas. I'm based out of Dallas, and I see some names on here that I've had at our events before. So It's great to see everybody and see everybody's name in the chat. So I'm excited to share personal branding with you today, and excited to be a part of this with Jen.
Perfect. So let's just jump right into it. So as we are all mindful of how we are perceived, which links directly to our personal brand, we sometimes miss the fundamentals of this topic. So let's start from the beginning on exactly what is personal branding.
Yeah, so I think personal branding is a word that we hear a lot about, right? So I think you're right, Jen. We've got to get it down to the foundation. And when we talk about personal branding, I think we're referring to establishing and promoting what we stand for as individuals, as a contributor to our individual companies and to our industry, and then also to our personal life. I think our personal brand is a combination of both our skill set and our experiences, and finding and marrying those two to develop how you want to be perceived, right? Not only within the industry, but within your personal life as well. And I firmly believe that a personal brand will differentiate you and set you apart from other professionals within your field. We're in such a competitive world, and now we're in a competitive virtual world, which is crazy. So I think personal branding is important now more than ever. And Jen, I'm really interested in what you think about personal branding and why it's important, especially in the world that we're in today.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, as a foremost, whether we like it or not, whether you work on it or not, everyone has a brand, right? So have you ever Googled yourself or Googled your name? It's crazy especially in this digital world, what it comes up with. And I know that's just one layer of your brand, but just from a high level, if you Google your name, you have your picture out there, or maybe you're in articles that you've written, or your company, or your Facebook, or your LinkedIn, or your Twitter. You are building a brand, no matter whether you are focused on it or not. So proactively thinking about personal branding allows you to build your professional profile, to reaffirm your credentials, and to confirm your professional value, which is gaining insight, which allows you to then gain confidence, right? So I think personal branding enables you to differentiate yourself from other professionals in your department and in your field. So every little bit of things like typos and inefficiencies while working at any level of the customer service, you impact your personal brand inside of work and outside of work. And so the reason why I think it's so important is because your brand not only helps your company, but it really helps you start and manage your career throughout the length of whether you're just starting out in this industry or if you've been in the industry for 20, 30 years. Your brand is always at the forefront of what people think of when they say your name. So talking about the importance and staying relevant in this world. We're in the digital world. Obviously, we're doing this virtual conference, and I love how many people are attending these sessions. But how do you really stay relevant in a virtual world right now, considering that we're so used to being face to face and getting that dialogue? What are your suggestions on that?
Yeah, so I think to stay relevant, you have to continually pay attention to how you're presenting yourself, right? And whether that's whether you're at a conference table in a boardroom or you're sitting in your home office having technical difficulties, how you present yourself is important, and how you're perceived by your colleagues, by your industry friends, and by your own personal relationships. So how do you do that? Well, I think you have to take some time to evaluate and self-reflect on how you think you portray yourself, both personally and professionally. I think that goes with an appearance, your tone, and your persona, which we'll get into a little bit later, Jen. Are you making a good first impression? Does your attitude and your body language, are they in sync, right, with the way that you want to portray yourself? And we live in a world where perception is reality, right? So you could have the best intentions, but if they're perceived negatively, then that's the reality. So I think that kind of dovetails nicely into our professional online presence and how we stay relevant online. We are in a social media driven world. And what you post on social media is a direct reflection of how, you know, your brand can be perceived. So you want to make sure that you're posting relevant information on your LinkedIn profile, that you have an updated LinkedIn profile. That for me personally, I keep things separate on our social media world. So I have a LinkedIn page that's professional, and then I have a Facebook page that if you ever see me on Facebook, all it is pictures of my 4-year-old son, and pre-COVID it's traveling. But I keep those things separate. And then you always want to up your game when it comes.
You bring up a good point. You bring up real quick. You bring up a good point of you split out your professional and your personal life. Have you found what made you go down that route, and what are some tips? I know a lot of us struggle with that. You know, work-life balance. Do you stay completely professional and not bring in your personal life? Is there a bridge or a gap or a bridge that you can bridge both your personal and your professional life, especially in the social media world? From LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you have all these social media platforms, and what would you say to the audience in regards to all those social media platforms for your brand?
Yeah, so I think you have to, again, self-reflect about what you want to portray. I think that it can absolutely be done professionally and eloquently to commingle your social media platforms with your personal and your professional life. For me, I choose to keep them separate. It's just, it's compartmentalizing, I think, in one strategy, but it's just easier for me to use LinkedIn as my professional platform for networking and for connecting and for seeing industry knowledge and news and gaining that knowledge and news versus commingling it on a Facebook news feed. So I'm a scroller. Like, I have friends who they're readers, right? So they like Twitter because they like to read. Well, I'm a scroller and a double tapper. Like, I want to like pictures. I want to see pictures. I'm not much of a reader on a Facebook platform. So for me, it just, and how I consume social media, it made sense to keep those separate. But I know that that's not how it is for everybody. So I would, just caution, if you do commingle those, to make sure that you understand that what you're putting out there is also a direct reflection of your brand. And you want to be cognizant of that and make sure that you're supporting your own personal brand through your posts.
Yeah, it tells a story about you to a stranger, right? You're building your narrative, whether you share on social media, and then we'll talk about the resume and your photos and videos. It continues to build that. And it's really, what are your goals, and what do you want your story to tell yourself about, right?
Yeah. I think too, in staying relevant, we touched on this a little bit, is networking. And I think we did a really great job as an industry pivoting at the beginning of COVID, when there was this mass exodus to move everybody home, right? And so you're out of your office space, you're out of your after work happy hours and things like that. And we pivoted really well, and through the Alliance as well, in our common ground meetups and our virtual happy hours, and we really embrace networking opportunities as an industry. And I think that is key for your brand, right? You want to be out in front of people, you want to be making connections, you want to be sharing your story, your skills, can help someone else, right? What you've been through, your life experiences can, maybe if Jen's looking at embracing her personal brand, maybe something I've been through could help her in her self-realization. So I think embracing networking and all the social engagements that we do now virtually instead of in person are really key to also displaying and building that brand, getting your name out there. Really, you want to get your name out there, right? You want to get your name, you want to get your skill set, your dependability, your reliability. And then when you need a call to action, you want people to know that, you're serious. If you need something, if you need recruiting help, or maybe COVID finds you out of a job, your personal brand should carry you through with those connections and help you maybe open some doors that you wouldn't have had beforehand.
Exactly. So when we talk about, the factors that you need to think about on your personal branding, what comes to mind when we're building that personal brand? Just not outside of the social media, like the LinkedIn and just the cosmetics of it, but what are the data or the elements that you would kind of go towards to build that brand?
Yeah, so I think number one is your persona, right? How you, what character aspects you're presenting and how those are perceived by others. So are you friendly? Are you serious? Are you playful? Are you mostly buttoned up professional? Or maybe you're a combination of all of them. I think knowing what your persona is and knowing that persona in different situations is a key element in developing your brand. And so you'll hear me talk a lot about knowing your audience, right? You can be different things. You don't have to be buttoned up professional all the time. There's a time and a place for everything, but you need to know your audience. You need to be self-aware enough to know who you're presenting, who you're maybe having a meeting with or having a happy hour with, and how to adapt to those situations, being flexible. And I think you also, number two, I would think would be a purpose. You have to know your why. You hear a lot about, what's your why? Why do you come to work every day? Well, okay, then ask yourself that 4 more times and you figure out like what your actual why is. So you have to have a purpose for what you're doing. And you really want to define that. And we'll send out some materials after our call on, how you develop your personal brand. And I think that's a really key element, is developing your why and your purpose. And then I think the other 2 things, Jen, that I would just caution everybody to be aware of is your tone and your language. And I think those can also be situational, right? Again, know your audience, but tone is definitely perceived, especially in a written world. So you can send a email or a text message and have the best intentions, but somebody can perceive that tone maybe in a negative way. So you want to be aware of your verbal and your written communication and how that's coming across. And then the language that you use, is industry jargon needed? Is savvy language or maybe playful language needed? Always, being respectful and professional, of course, but just know when to use more serious language and when maybe it's, a more fun, playful type experience. Again, just know your audience. But I think the key to any factor of developing your brand, and I said this earlier, is continually evaluating yourself and being self-aware enough to know that we grow as individuals and our goals change and our career paths change, sometimes by on our own volition and sometimes not, but always being able to adapt and knowing at the core, in your heart of hearts, what you are and who you want to be. And putting that in every situation, no matter what that situation is, and being honest and true to yourself is really the most important in developing your brand.
Yeah, you hit on a good point on how you need to adapt to be okay with maybe what you thought you needed, or at the time your brand needed to be something 5 years ago, and now today it needs to be a little bit different. That's an example that I had, and Valerie, you brought up a piece that reminded me, some personal things help us connect with others. When I first started my career, I thought that adding my personal story or being vulnerable enough to say, not be perfect, the cookie cutter perfect, that's how I could build my brand strong. But then I realized that opening up and telling people that what I'm going through in my personal life connects you, and it humanizes yourself, because I think sometimes women today, we feel like we have to be on point all the time, to be strong, to not show weakness, because in the mind, it's like that's how you build your brand. You're a strong, independent leader, individual. But that's actually, in my case, in my personal experience, the more that I've opened up and been vulnerable to tell my story, the more I feel that has allowed others to see the real me, and not just here's my checklist of what I need to be successful. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree. If you've ever worked with me in any professional setting, I talk a lot about my family and, as a working mom and being a part of the Alliance and all of these things. We all have a million things going on. So connecting on those personal levels is 100% important. And like Valerie said, it does allow you to connect with people in a way outside of the 4 walls of what we do in this industry. And I talk, when I say I keep professional and personal separate, I mean that solely on social media. Like I said, I've sat around a million conference tables and, talked about Trip for 30 minutes out of, whatever time we have. So you do have to be vulnerable. You do have to share your experiences. And I think that, talking about COVID, I think the best thing that COVID has given all of us is patience and grace, right? To accept and adapt and be flexible and accept people for, you know, what they are and what they're going through. This is a difficult time. And so being able to be patient and gracious and understanding is a big part to, you know, to what the world is that we live in right now. So Jen, I'm curious, I know you've done a lot of self-reflection and training on personal branding within your own organization, and then also, you know, within your own life. So if you had to narrow it down to the top 5 things that everyone needs to think about when they're developing their brand, what would those 5 things be?
Yeah, so I think the number one piece is understanding your value. You know, when you're walking around your career figuring out what you want to do, you first need to be confident in yourself. Your value isn't based on who you work for or your position at your job, but it's how well can you be? Can you be the best version that you can be? So understanding your values so that you can bring those attributes to the table and you can be confident about talking about it. I think that's another thing that women, or maybe it's just me, have a hard time at maybe vocalizing what we're good at, because we don't want to seem that we have a big ego, or, you know, we're better than others or whatever, but it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with really understanding yourself and bringing that value to the table. And then the second thing I think is defining your story. What are your top skills and your work accomplishments? What is your career goal? I think understanding that, the career goal part is, do you want to be a CEO, or do you want to be a claims adjuster, or do you want to be a supervisor? Whatever the case may be that best version of that person, right? And understand what the steps it takes to get there. I think those two, for the most part, those are the top 2 pieces. Understand your value and defining your story.
And I think
we have a couple other more. Okay. Yep, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, I think part of defining your story is those personal experiences, right? It's molding your skill set and your personal experiences with defining what that means to you and what your story is, and how do you consistently display that through, you know, your work efforts, through your social media platforms, whatever it might be. Just calling on those experiences to define that story and develop those goals. You know, what's in your heart of heart.
Yeah, your stories allow you to relate, others to relate to you and easily remember you, right? No one's going to remember me for just my name and my company. They're going to associate, everyone uses, you know, play on words, and how do you associate other people? So how do you build a story around who you are that's not just your title or not just your company name? I think that's really what's important, is figuring truly what that is, and then be living it on a daily basis, and just being self-aware of who you are. I think the third one is present for success, right? Your posture, your body language, your facial expressions, your eye contact. I know that's a big one, right? When you know, you're talking to someone, just looking at someone in their eye, you build that trust factor. So I know those are little things that people are like, well, that's common sense, right? But when you really dive down into it, I think those pieces are extremely important.
Well, I think presenting for success too is really important. Again, I know we're talking a lot about the world that we're in now, in the virtual world, but you know, how you come across on your virtual meetings and your one-on-ones or your sales presentations, whatever it is that you're out there doing in our industry, you know, we have to be cognizant of how we're presenting in a virtual world, because it's different than how you would necessarily posture yourself walking into a conference room. But I try to, you know, I get up every morning, I do my hair, I do my makeup. It tries to make me feel human, for one. But, you know, and I also think it's my work day, right? It's a professional day. And my mother, I don't know if she's on here today, she's in the industry too, but she's always told me, you dress for the job you want, right? So I still get up every morning and I get dressed because I get dressed for work, and it makes me feel like professional still, even though I'm in the 4 walls of my house all day, every day, and not traveling. So Jen, I think I may be jumping ahead a little bit here, but after presenting for success, I keep thinking about your story and how you, put yourself out there. What do you think about consistently delivering, right? Walking the walk, not just talking the talk. Do you think would that be in your list of top 5?
Yeah, I think that would definitely be a solid focus that you have to be with building your brand, right? You can wear an outfit, you can do your hair, put makeup on, but if your word, you do not stand up to your word, you say that you're going to do X and then you never deliver, that starts getting out, right? Our industry is big, but it's small, especially when we talk about our industry, right? And if you do not follow through, if you're not constantly delivering what you're saying, then that builds that there's a lack of trust in you, and then people are gonna not have as much confidence when they are looking to you to accomplish something, right? So I think you've got to be very mindful of consistently delivering.
Yeah, I think you have to follow through on your promises, right? Then you're seen as dependable and reliable, and we all want to be trustworthy. We all want to be dependable and reliable. So you have to be cognizant of not, over promising and under delivering, right? You always want to show up and do for your colleagues what your colleagues would do for you. The golden rule, apply the golden rule, right? How you want to be treated. So I think that's important. And I also think being consistent doesn't mean that you can't change, right? You're not stuck because consistency doesn't always mean not changing. You still have to be self-aware and evaluate where you're at in your career, what you're doing, and how you can evolve to meet the goals that are set forth in front of you.
Yeah, I think consistently delivering it's just demonstrating your skills and differentiating characteristics. We walk the talk, right? You don't talk and don't deliver. So it's evolving, but it's always staying true to your word.
We've got a question in the chat.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I didn't know if you saw it when you were talking, but we had a question in the chat about, does your value stem from your core values, such as kindness, integrity, etc.?
I think so. I think that's very important. At the root of it, you have to understand who you are, and then that shines through. And I think being genuine and kind, that naturally exudes out of you, right?
I absolutely agree. I think your value on your personal brand 100% stems from your core values and what your belief system is, as far as honesty, integrity, kindness, being respectful. I think that is your value. That's what you do well. That's your work serves best when you are those things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely. I think too, you don't want to change who you are, right? To build your brand, we're not saying that you have to be somebody that you're not. It's first identifying who you are so that you can then establish and be mindful of your brand. I think it's, again, personal branding just comes into a huge self-awareness. You have to always be mindful of your audience, be mindful of your goals, know what you're wanting, and then your core component comes out in whatever light it may be, right?
Yes, 100%, I agree.
So talking about just growing and learning, I think the 5th one is never stop learning, right? Not just from who you are and how to grow as a person, but when we talk about your brand, again, where do you want to go, right? If you want to be a CEO, what other courses, what other books, reaching out to colleagues, finding that mentorship and learning and growing, they can even help you, right? I found that a lot of times talking to others within the industry, on asking them how they perceive me also helps identify what I might need to change or what I might need to just be self-aware of. So I always tell my team here at Prime is that if you're not learning every day, something little, it doesn't have to be monumental, but always learning then we need to reevaluate what you're doing, because you should always be expanding yourself and pushing yourself and learning different perspectives and different viewpoints and understanding how people see you.
Yeah, and I think it shows a level of commitment, right, to yourself and to your industry, maybe to your company or your role, that you're eager to learn. And I agree, Danielle, lifelong learning does make us resilient to change, right? We're never going to know it all, and there's always going to be somebody who knows more than us. So you have to, you have to be a sponge and absorb industry knowledge and always be learning about yourself and your company. And as we learn more, we get better, and we get better together, which I think is the key of this conference, is that we are better together. So we learn from each other. We can learn in a studious and a environment, or just from networking and talking with others. You're always absorbing and always learning something new. And I think just my opinion on the things that we've talked about so far, I think that I've neglected to say this earlier, that a personal brand is really rooted in authenticity, right? So you have to know, and you have to know who you are and be authentic in what you're putting out there, because if you're not, you will get seen right through. You can't pull the wool over somebody's eyes when you're not being authentic. So you want to draw from those real achievements. You want to draw from your strengths and your emotions and your personal experiences. And as you grow as an individual, you want your brand to grow with you. So it might change, it might evolve as you evolve. You just have to keep your goals and your career aspirations in mind, Jen, that you talked about earlier.
Yeah, so you talk about evolving. For you, and we mentioned about changing what your personal brand was maybe 5 years ago to now. What was that pivotal point? Give the audience some examples of when you maybe identified that you might have had to shift your brand just a bit because of the position or a position that you were looking to gain.
So for me, it was when I started leading people, to be honest with you. I went from an individual contributor to leading people. And that was really when I had to self-evaluate and see how I'm perceived as a leader, not just as a contributor. And that was pivotal, because I'd spent a lot of my career in sales and account management, where I was perceived just by my customer, not necessarily by an internal colleague or mentor relationship. So that was really pivotal for me, where I had to, kind of circle back and really do some self-evaluating and spend some time looking inward and making sure that my career, what I was thankful for, was also now my brand was going to go with me into this new role. So that was pivotal for me. I don't, what about for you? What would you say?
Yeah, so I think I have some team members, colleagues from Prime on this session, so you might laugh at this, but one of my biggest pieces when I had to be self-aware was, I think my brand was a bit different external to the industry than internal. And so internally, a lot of individuals thought I was very closed off and not as approachable, because I was a heads down. I knew what I wanted to get at. And so I had to, again, be self-aware and be more open and open myself up to vulnerability, because I needed to change my brand, not because I needed to change myself, because I saw myself as, this outgoing individual that was caring, that wanted to mentor, that was very passionate about one of my biggest passions is for those that within each position within my company, is they really understand what they're doing and why they're doing it and the impact that they make. And I'm talking about a brand, because my brand was more, I was more standoffish. And that wasn't who I wanted to be, right? And so I had to work on that when someone vocally told me that they saw me differently than I thought I was, right? So I had to step back, and then I had to say, okay, what was my goal? I wanted to be an individual that people knew that I wanted to be an individual that others saw as working hard, and they wanted to work hard as well, right? And that's kind of really where it wasn't at. So I had to shift. I had to shift my brand and be mindful at where that was at. So I kind of sat down and I thought of one, okay, what words would I use to describe my personality? What are my best characteristics? What do I want to achieve? What is my ultimate goal? And being able to back into that, then I was able to shine a little bit of a different light of who I was within my own organization.
I think those are really great questions that our attendees can probably ask themselves if they haven't started developing their brand, or if they're wondering how to get started in developing their brand. I think what Jen just said, and I don't know if folks are taking notes on the call, but I think those are really good things to ask yourself if you're starting down this kind of personal branding journey. So I'm going to repeat it, Jen. I took some notes here while you were saying that. So what words would you use to best describe your personality? I'd say 3 to 5 words. What are your best characteristics? What are your top 5 characteristics? And what are your top 5 work skills? What do you do really well? And that is really a good starting point for formulating your brand, not only your brand, but also your goals, right? If you haven't thought about what your career goals are, those are really good questions to start down that development path as well.
Yeah.
We've got a question in the chat. Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Yeah, Danielle, you asked how I shifted my mindset of those that may have not known you on the old brand. Honestly, it came down to vulnerability for me. I was told that I kept the wall very thick, that I wouldn't allow people too close to really understand who I was, because I was so business and so career driven that I sometimes wasn't as self-aware. So I've really dug down deep over the last several, I would probably say 3 to 5 years, really just had to reset. We talk about lenses, and I think we're going to be talking about that. That's something that we'll be talking about more in 2021, is shifting your lens, refocusing, cleaning it off, getting it clear. That's what I did, and I was open. I just started to talk to people and get their feedback, ask the question. You don't know, we all walk around in the world and think we might be perceived one way, but if you just ask people what they think of you in a safe environment, right? I think you'll get a lot of good feedback, and that also helps shift if you need to shift and know.
And you have to be open. You have to be open to receiving that feedback, right? I mean, that's a really important, I think, element of shifting your mindset, especially when you come to realize, or someone tells you that maybe how you're being perceived is not what you want. You have to be open to that feedback. You have to receive that with an open mind and an open heart, and really be willing to evaluate. Maybe it's not something that needs to be shifted, but maybe it is. And like in Jen's situation, she realized this isn't how I want to be perceived. So she was open and receptive to that feedback and really internalized it, and decided, what changes she needed to make or how her perception needed to change. I think that's really crucial. And sometimes that can be hard, right? I mean, hearing feedback about yourself is hard because we know ourselves best. So when somebody tells you something contradictory to what you think, it's sometimes hard to receive. But being in a safe space and with people that you trust, I think it can be monumental in developing that brand and evolving your brand.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we have about 5 minutes left. Allison, do you have any closing thoughts, or anyone in the audience, feel free to ask any other questions. We hope that this has been valuable to you, but at the core, Allison, if you could say it in a minute or two, what ultimately, if you could boost your personal brand, what is personal brand encompass?
Oh, that's a good one. I wasn't, we did prep for this, but I don't know that I was necessarily prepared for that one. So I'm gonna have to think on my feet here. So I think I can for me, and this is just my personal thoughts, I think for me, my personal brand has to be, it's authenticity. That is, I said it earlier, and not to be repetitive, but that's just how passionate I am about it. I want to be perceived as authentic. I want to be authentic in my listening and in my responses, and I want to be empathetic. But also I want to be perceived as professional and intelligent and all of those other things that you want to be perceived as. So for me to boost my brand, I just have to be me, and I have to know every day who I am and what that means to me, and how my personal experience has got me to where I am, and how I can reach out and help other people boost their brand, right? Because I just got off that Ally session before we started this one, and I'll tell you what, nothing motivates you more than that session. So if you didn't have a chance to watch it, go back, and if it's recorded somewhere, I'm not sure. Felicia could probably answer that, but you need to watch it because it was incredible. I want to be an ally, and I also want to be someone who, if you're developing your brand, let's talk about it. Let's give the feedback. Let's have the honest conversations. And I think just developing real relationships and having real conversations and being authentic throughout is how you boost your personal brand.
Yep, I agree. I think no, that's great. I think there's three main questions I ask myself. How authentic is my brand? Is it aligned with reality? And then, am I delivering my brand consistently, right? And if you continue to just ask yourself those questions, it will get you where you are. And know that you can't perfect your brand in day one or overnight, right? But you start somewhere. So we gave you some great questions to kind of think about. Feel free to reach out to Allison and I anytime. This alliance, I love this alliance. I love being part of it. I'm honored that I'm on the board because we have such a great group of women and men, and just the organization that allows you to have these open conversations. And we all just want to be, we are better together. And I know that, that's our theme this conference, but as we were trying to decide what the theme of this conference was, it just gelled perfectly, because that's what we're here for, right? And we are better together. So Allison, I'll let you close, and I thank everyone for today.
Yeah, thank you everybody for joining. We really, really appreciate it. Like Jen said, reach out to either one of us. We're happy to assist you as you're developing your brand, or walk through the steps with you, whatever you need. Jen, I want to say thank you to you for asking me to join you on this session. It was really great, and I really enjoyed spending the last several weeks getting to know you and your personal brand, and also continuing, to work on mine. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining, and we really appreciate your time and attention today. And thank you for all the wonderful feedback in the chat too. It's so great when it's interactive. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you, guys. Bye.